You're a third-rate duelist with a fourth-rate deck.
What's up, YouTube? This is Brandon with Third Rate Duelist coming at you guys with a deck profile. So, ever since the Banlist came out, everyone's been asking me for an updated Shaddoll list. So I'm going to go ahead and provide that for you guys today. Now, keep in mind, this isn't that different from the previous build that I posted. But last weekend, I did take this to locals because we were playing with the new Banlist, and I did go undefeated. We only played 4 rounds. So round 1, I played against Guard Dragon Dino. Round 2, I played against Danger Lair. Round 3, I played against True Draco. And round 4, I played against Burning Abyss Orcust. So nothing too meta, but I did go undefeated at locals with this list. Now keep in mind, this isn't that different than the list that I posted about a week ago. But a couple things has changed, but let's just go ahead and get right into it. So start off playing 2 Shaddoll Beasts, the draw card, 2 Squamata. This is the best main deck, Shaddoll Monster in my opinion. 2 Hedgehog, 2 Falco, and 1 Dragon. I kept the Shaddoll count the same. I mean, you don't want to draw too many Shaddoll monsters because then you won't be able to make any plays in your brick. But you have to have enough so that way you can at least fusion summon. So this deck can go first or go second, which is what I like about it. Obviously, it's Shaddoll, so it's going to do better going second, especially if the opponent ends on next direct monster. But turn 1, you can end on some pretty sick combos. I posted a combo video for those of you who are new to the channel and or haven't seen a Shaddoll profile of mine before. I posted a combo video last week about what I can do with this build. And so go ahead and check that out if you haven't yet. But anyways, back to what I was saying, I wouldn't change the Shaddoll lineup. I like the 9 Shaddoll monsters. I kind of missed playing 2 Dragon over the weekend, not going to lie. But not enough to warrant playing a second copy of it. As I've always said, Dragon's probably the worst main deck Shaddoll monster just because he doesn't do anything to further your game state. Playing 3 Mathematician. In the previous list, I played 2 Mathematician, 1 Armageddon Knight. I ended up cutting the Armageddon Knight for the 3rd Mathematician just because Mathematician's inherently better because not only can you send like Hedgehog to search a Shaddoll monster, but you can also send Damage Juggler so that way you can search Trick Clown. As to where Armageddon Knight, you can only send Dark monsters. Mathematician can either be a Shaddoll monster for me or he can be a light fusion target. So with this deck, as long as you can make Construct, you can get the ball rolling and get some pretty good plays going. And then I am still only playing 2 Alistair the Invoker. Really good card. Being able to search invocations is really good. Because as long as you can get to a fusion spell and make Construct, as I just stated, you're doing pretty good. And then I am playing 2 Trick Clown, 2 Damage Juggler. This ratio didn't change. Don't play any more Trick Clown than 2 because you don't want to see multiple copies of this card in your hand. And then this card is semi-limited, so you can only play 2 copies of it. But it's really good being able to Mathematician dump this and then search Trick Clown because not only is he link fodder, but it's also that way you can make a Construct on your opponent's turn too. Because like with the board this can end on turn 1, next turn you can Boral Sword and OTK your opponent, which is pretty good. And then these guys help make that possible. And then I am still playing 1 Clop Serpent, 1 Wyvern Burster, link fodder. They search each other, and it's also light target for Construct and Mechaba, dark material for Winda and Calga. And then 2 BLS. Thought about bumping this up to 3 because in like previous lists I had tested playing 3 of this, but the time Construct was at 1. Now that Construct's at 3, this deck can pop off a lot better because Construct just constantly generates resource for you. But might try this, a 3rd one of this or Levian here. Haven't decided yet. I'm kind of having trouble with the room in this. And then I am still only playing 1 Dad. The reason only 1 copy of Dad still is it's for a very simple reason, and that simple reason is the fact that I can't find room for the 2nd copy of it. Kind of sucks with the Eclipse Wyvern being banned. You have to hard draw this now, and playing 2 copies of Dad would help with that. But I honestly just don't know what to cut to play a 2nd copy of it. So if I figure that out, I'll let you guys know and put a pinned comment on it in this profile. But for now, it's still only 1 copy of Dad. This deck still has an insane amount of OTK potential. So 3 Effect Veiler, Again, I wanted to play a hand trap, and I wanted to play a hand trap that I could also use for a light target to make Construct or Mechaba, so Effect Veiler I feel like is the best option. And that's it for all the monsters. It's a pretty heavy monster count. And then 3 Shaddoll Fusion. It's Shaddoll Fusion. I mean, this card's super good, especially now that Construct's back at 3. 3 L Shaddoll Fusion. I'm not playing Nef Shaddoll Fusion. For any of you that were curious, I don't really like that card a whole lot because Nef Shaddoll Fusion allows you to normal summon a Shaddoll monster, so that way you can change its attribute. And I would rather use my normal summon on like Mathematician or Alistair, the Invoker of Madness, to kind of get things going. Shaddoll Fusion, L Shaddoll Fusion are good enough in my opinion, especially with as many light targets as I play, and being able to search, Shaddoll monsters or light targets I feel like is adequate. And then still only 2 Invocation. 3 is Cloggy in my opinion. You can search it with Alistair the Invoker, and it recycles itself pretty good. And then 3 Called by the Grave. So the reason I am main decking 3 Called by the Grave is because your Shaddoll Fusion is constantly susceptible to Ash. I have had a couple people asking me about this, so I'll go ahead and explain the ruling now. And that's if you read the card text of Magical Meltdown, it says the activation of your cards and effects that include an effect that fusion summons a fusion monster cannot be negated. So the way that this card text is interpreted and the way it is ruled is, just break it down into 2 sentences really. The activation of your cards and the activation of your effects is how it is read ruling wise. So since Ash Blossom does not negate the activation or negate the activation of an effect of Shaddoll Fusion, even if you have Magical Meltdown on the field, they can still Ash Shaddoll Fusion. Even if they don't control an X-Direct monster on their side of the field, they can still Ash Shaddoll Fusion. That's why Called by the Grave is so important. And then I am playing 2 copies of Magical Meltdown and 1 Terraforming. Searches Alistair the Invoker. I didn't max out on this, and I didn't max out on Alistair because I don't want to see multiple copies of these cards in my hand. So I feel like 2 and 1 Terraforming is adequate. Opening multiple copies of Magical Meltdown, you can only play one. You can only play it once per turn, so I don't really. It's a dead draw or dead card in hand, which I don't feel like is that good. Having multiple copies of Alistair the Invoker isn't as bad as having multiple copies of Magical Meltdown, because at least you can discard the Alistair to bump up a fusion monster, and then have like negate fodder with Mechaba to negate a monster effect. But I don't want to draw multiple copies of Magical Meltdown. And for the last spell, 1 Foolish Burial can either be a Shaddoll monster by sending Hedgehog, or you can send Damage Juggler, so that way you can search Trick Clown. And then the last main deck card, all my previous Shaddoll lists have been 41. This one's 42, because I am playing Shaddoll Core. I couldn't figure out what to take out for this card, and I really, really wanted to play it. So I ended up just adding it in to make it a 42 card deck. The reason being is because now that Construct's at 3, if you watch the combo video I did, there's a lot of times where I will send El Shaddoll Fusion off of Construct and or Squamata, and then whenever I link off the Construct, I'll add the El Shaddoll Fusion back, so that way I can El Shaddoll Fusion, into a window, and then use Alistair the Invoker of Madness's effect to search an invocation. Now that Construct's at 3, playing this card is super good playing first, because instead of like El Shaddoll Fusioning into a window, so that way on your turn, so that way you can trigger Alistair the Invoker's of Madness's effect. Now I can just El Shaddoll Fusion into another Construct, which is super good, dump the core, add the El Shaddoll Fusion back, and then find a way, like link off the second copy of Construct or whatever, and get the core back to hand, and then I can use the core, and if I still have Construct on the field, as the fusion material to make Winda. And then the cool thing about Shaddoll Core is that if this is the only Shaddoll card you have other than like the fusions, you can actually play the core, and it can be used as your Shaddoll monster for the fusion summon, as long as you have another attribute monster that you can use for the fusion summon. So this card's super good. Just being able to add back your fusion spells and dump it off of Squamata or Construct, I feel it's really good, and it helps with the turn 1 play quite a bit. The only thing that sucks about this card is the fact that you draw it. I sided it out quite a bit if I knew I was playing second last weekend, because it's a trap card and it's slow, and there's other things I'd rather see in my opening hand. But this card is super good for when you're playing first. And that does it for the main deck. It's 42 cards, as I stated earlier. For the extra deck, 3 El Shaddoll Construct. I was so happy when this card came off the list. Shaddolls are my favorite deck, and I played this deck quite a bit back in like Duelist Alliance format and stuff like that, and I always did really well with Shaddolls. So I'm really glad that Construct's back at 3. It's always grinded my gears that Construct got banned, but like Dante's never hit the ban list. Anyways, this card's super good, and having it 3 now is like super good because it makes this deck a lot better. Because like if I have a Mecha Ball in the field, I can El Shaddoll Fusion into a second copy of Construct now during like the battle phase and swing for game. And then the fact that like Construct constantly gathers you resource because you're going to dump a core to add back a fusion spell, or you can dump a beast to draw a card, dump Squamata to dump a Falco to set it. Construct just adds so much recursion, or so much, I shouldn't say recursion, adds so much resource to the deck, and I feel like having 3 of it is very good. And then I am only playing 2 copies of El Shaddoll Winda. I feel like now that Construct's at 3, you don't need to make Winda as much. Now, I might be wrong. Eventually, I might change this up and put back in the 3rd copy of Winda. But for now, 2 is fine. I'd never missed the 3rd all weekend. So, yeah, I am still playing the 1 copy of Shekanaga. The reason being is because I'm still playing Mathematician, and Shekanaga only came up once over the weekend, and I was able to El Shaddoll Fusion into, Shek to make game. But other than that, like, it only came up the 1 time just because I would honestly rather Fusion summon into a Construct. This card isn't as necessary anymore now that, it's not, old school like Chaos Shaddoll / Burning Abyss days where you had to play Shekanaga to out the mirror match. So Shek's in there just because it's another Fusion target, and if I ever do play against the mirror match, I can make Shek. Because Construct's effect to automatically destroy special summon monster is a mandatory trigger, so you just attack into the opponent's Construct with Shek and then negate it. So 1 copy of it for now. This might get traded out for the 3rd copy of Winda, but I haven't decided yet. I liked having it, even though it only came up the 1 time. Only 2 copies of Mechaba. The reason being is because playing 3 Mechaba in the previous list was kind of necessary in my opinion, because you needed to be able to fusion summon into 2,500 attack monsters, and you could easily do that with the Invoked engine because this was your beat stick. Outside of like Mechaba being good because of the negates, this was the beat stick. Now that Construct's at 3, I don't feel like it's as necessary, so I cut it down to 2. And then still playing the 1 Invoked Calga. This card is super strong going first against everything, other than like maybe True Draco. True Draco is like the worst card. Like as the worst. This card sucks against True Draco. Sorry, got a little tongue tied there. So outside of that, like against Ultrageist, they're not going to get the Multi-Faker special summon if they activate it in hand. Against Orcus, that's their 1 monster effect. This card is just super strong, especially if you can end board with the Invoker of Madness with the Calga and a Mechaba. Because Calga's card text states, if an opponent's monster attempts to activate, so even if you have Mechaba in the field and you negate and banish it, that's their 1 monster effect for the turn, and they're kind of stuck. And a lot of the turn 1 boards with this deck are, a Calga and a Mechaba, or a Calga and a Winda, and it forces your opponent to choose what to deal with, especially if you have Calga and Winda, because they get 1 special summon per turn. Let's see if I can pull out the window real quick. Like, if you have both these in the field, they either get 1 special summon per turn or 1 monster effect per turn. And so they have to choose, like, okay, they can out the Winda, but then they only have 1 monster effect for the turn. But if they out the Calga, then they're only down to 1 special summon for the turn. It's kind of a hard lock for a lot of decks to out. And I did that quite a bit over the weekend, where my turn 1 play would be Alistair the Invoker of Madness with, a Calga, a Set Falco, and a Winda. And then, like, if they couldn't out the board next turn, I would just flip Falco and not use its effect, obviously, but flip Falco and sink Link 4 into Boral Sword, use the Winda's effect to add back a fusion spell from the graveyard, and then just proceed to push for game from there. Because since this deck generates so much fusion resource with, with Invocation's Grave effect, add Alistair back to your hand, this guy to just search Invocations. As long as you end your turn with like an Invocation in hand, and the next turn you can make Boral Sword and like make another Mechaba, and Shaddoll Fusion to another Shaddoll Fusion monster like Construct, you're going to swing for game. And this was super good all weekend, just being able to do this, or Calga and Mechaba. A lot of decks couldn't out it other than the True Draco deck. And then just game 2, I just didn't do that against True Draco. Game 2, I just tried to be easy with resource, so that way they just wouldn't plow through my board. And then that's it for the fusions. For the links, 2 Alistair the Invoker of Madness. I never needed a 3rd. 2 does come up, because you can, like, if you don't have an Alistair the Invoker, you can just link this and a second construct off to make another one of these, and then you can invocation this from grave. That way you keep him on the field, because he's considered Alistair the Invoker while in grave or on field, which that came up a couple times. That way I could just start getting, you know, combo plays going, so that way I could search another invocation and la-di-da-da-da. But never missed the third copy of it. 2 is necessary. 1 Lambda, just because I wanted a generic link 2 to make, so that way, because Alistair the Invoker, his requirements are 2 different monsters with different types and attributes, and the deck's mainly light and darks, outside of like Mathematician being an earth. And a lot of the main deck monsters are spellcasters. Other than like BLS and Dad and the Baby Dragons, they're all pretty well spellcasters. So I didn't want to lock myself and not be able to make a link monster to try and get things going. And then I ended up taking out the Abyss Dweller to play 1 Nightmare Unicorn. I opted to play this because now that I feel like Sky Striker is going to kind of be dead with Widow Anchor going to 1. Like Sky Striker is not as big of a menace for this deck now that Widow Anchor's at 1, because like the hardest thing for me to answer was multiple Widow Anchors on my turn. Now that Widow Anchor's at 1, it's not as big of an issue. So Striker's not as hard of a matchup for this deck, and I feel like Thunder Dragon's going to be the best deck. And so I wanted to add in an extra deck monster that would kind of help me out double Colossuses or whatever. So I opted for the Unicorn. The reason Thunder Dragon is such a hard matchup for this deck is because they protect themselves, and Construct just can't automatically destroy them, which is what makes it hard. The lack of searching and stuff can kind of like pinch you a little bit, but it's not too terrible most of the time. It's just the lack of destruction. So that's why I put the Unicorn in. I didn't really make a Abyss Dweller too often, and I felt like this was better. And I used this quite a bit over the weekend. Overload, again, so I wanted a link 4 and then something I could use to help me out, to help out Thunder Dragon. So that was pretty good. I made it once over the weekend, but I didn't play against any Thunder Dragon. And then 1 Boral Sword. This card was so good over the weekend. Like, once I did, like, you know, the Mechaba Kalga or the Winda Kalga block or whatever, I would just link 4 into this and then swing for game. It was super good. And that was it. That's it for the extra deck. For the side deck, this is really up to you on what you want to play. I kind of catered this to kind of lean more towards back row and Thunder Dragon, because this deck can kind of struggle against back row a little bit. So pretty much like the main focus of the side deck right now is back row decks, because I feel like True Draco is going to be super good, Altergeist is going to be super good, which Winda kind of helps with the Altergeist match, because like you make Window when they activate Multi-Faker, then they can't get the Sequitos or whatever his name is, which kind of hurts them a lot. But like True Draco, all their monsters are normal summoned, so Construct just doesn't out them. And so you kind of have to play around that a little bit and try and push for game if you can. So kind of keep that in mind. Cater to side deck however you want. This is just my idea of what I feel like was good. 3 Danko Sekka. Maybe I'm reminiscent of Danko Shaddoll days, but this card is just super good. I mean, worst case scenario, it's a light target for Construct. Like, if you go for... This card's so good going first or second against True Draco. Like, against True Draco, they have to open Diagram or a way to get to it, and they have to open the trap. Because otherwise, it's not like they can set the spell and trap and then pop the Danko. They have to pop it with Diagram. So Danko is super strong. I sided against the True Draco guy I played against. It helped me win Game 2, if I recall correctly. So this card is just super good. And then again, like, you just Danko Sekka Altergeist to make Construct, or probably Winda. Like, you Danko Sekka, if you Danko Altergeist to make Winda, they're just going to lose. So this card was pretty good. And then 2 Lancia. I wanted a hand trap against Thunder. I couldn't find room for the 3rd. So, and again, at worst case scenario, Lancia is a light target for Construct. 2 Nibiru. Gary has my 3rd. I'm not even sure if I would side the 3rd, though, just because, again, like combo decks, you just make Winda against and win. The only combo deck that you can really struggle against is Thunder. Like Orchist, if you open Meltdown with Shaddoll Fusion, like, they have to crescendo the Meltdown, because if they don't, you resolve Shaddoll Fusion, they're not going to be able to stop it because of Meltdown, because crescendo negates the activation. So, like, a lot of combo decks, like, you just dump Shaddoll Fusion on them and, you know, swarm the board and push for as much damage as you can. But, so I feel like 2 Nibiru was adequate. I actually didn't end up siding it in all day Saturday, just because I didn't need it, honestly. Now, granted, if I were to play against Thunder, this would go in, and so would Lancia if I knew I was playing second. But And then 2 Twin Twister. I didn't opt for the third because I don't like the discard for cost because you don't get your Shaddoll monster effects. But again, like back row is a big enough ordeal that you kind of have to side Twin Twister because this deck can struggle against back row a little bit, especially like True Draco. True Draco is probably the hardest back row deck for this. And then triple Super Poly. I'm not main decking this because my primary thing is to play first with this deck, and I feel like Super Poly is a way better second card. And you know, it is a way better second card just because it breaks board, but like in theory it's always live in Shaddolls because a lot of the meta is like darks and lights, but the discard for cost kind of sucks, and I didn't want to like open Super Poly and you can't play it turn 1. So I didn't feel like it was that great in this. I'd rather have Shaddoll Fusion or El Shaddoll Fusion or Invocation and just start popping off and then side this in and blow out card with it. And then I did side Starving Venom. This probably should have been the Protoplant Fusion just because if they go Titan Colossus then Super Poly is dead. You don't have a proper target unless you open a Shaddoll monster or Alistair. But this will probably get swapped out for the Protoplant Fusion one, so that way you can just nab both Titan and Colossus or double Colossus or whatever. And then the last one is 2 Evenly Matched. This card was so good. If I recall correctly, I might be wrong, but if I remember, I evenly matched the True Draco player and just won from there because it was super good. But that's it for the deck profile. So let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think of this. Again, not a lot's changed since the previous list, but things I did change. You guys have been asking about it, so I figured I'd go ahead and show you and give you my feedback on it. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'll also post a pinned comment of the combo video in the comment section below this video as well, so that way those of you who haven't seen it can check it out if you want. So let me know what you guys think. Later, YouTube.